The breaking news that we have for you is that, to the surprise of many, including, I'll be honest, myself, the Supreme Court has denied Donald Trump's bid to stay his criminal sentence. He is scheduled to be sentenced tomorrow to no jail time, but as of tomorrow, he will officially be sentenced for the 34-count felony conviction in New York. The Supreme Court asked and answered. They have said no to Donald Trump's bid to stay his sentencing.
Michael, I want to get your take on how we started the day today with the judge ruling that Trump was in contempt of court for the 10th time, connected to violating the gag order. And while he threatened jail, while he has mentioned the possibility of jail time before, since he didn't believe that $1,000 would actually make a difference to Donald Trump, today we seem to see him make the most serious threat yet. I just want you to read on the judge's posturing today, and whether you think it actually is a real possibility that Donald Trump gets put behind bars here.
So what the judge did today was very smart, I think.
Okay, so I need you to stop whatever you are doing right now, because what just happened is absolutely unprecedented in American history. Donald Trump, the sitting president of the United States, was physically dragged out of a federal courtroom after he started screaming at a judge. I am not making this up. This actually happened in a real courtroom. Security officers had to physically remove the president of the United States from a courtroom because he could not control himself. He stood up in the middle of a hearing and started yelling at the judge. He called the judge a radical lunatic. He said the whole thing was rigged against him. He said he was above the law and everyone knew it. And when the judge told him to sit down and be quiet, he kept going anyway. He kept screaming. He kept pointing at the judge accusingly, until finally the judge had enough and ordered security to remove him from the courtroom entirely. This is not normal by any stretch of the imagination. This has never happened before in American history. A sitting president being dragged out of a courtroom like a common criminal who cannot follow basic rules of conduct that apply to everyone. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
Omar, in a trial that has had more than its share of dramatic moments already, we're only about a third of the way through. This was perhaps the most intense confrontation that we've seen yet. Donald Trump has very persistently violated this gag order. There's only $1,000 per violation that the judge can fine him. He warned when he found the first 9 violations that he would up the ante. Today he found a 10th violation, and he told Trump, if you keep this up, you are going to force me to put you in jail, as difficult as that will be for the trial, for the personnel, and for the country.
And I want you to think about what this means for a second here. This is the person who is supposed to represent the United States of America on the world stage with dignity. This is the person who is supposed to uphold the Constitution and the rule of law every single day. This is the person who took an oath to faithfully execute the laws of this country without exception. And he just got thrown out of a courtroom because he could not stop screaming at a judge like a child throwing a tantrum in public. The whole room sat there in complete shock, watching this happen in real time, right in front of them. Reporters were sending out updates on social media as it was happening because they could not believe what they were seeing. Legal observers could not believe what they were witnessing with their own eyes in that courtroom. One of the most powerful people on the planet being escorted out by security because he refused to follow the same rules that apply to everyone else. This is the kind of thing you expect to see in a movie about a dictator losing his grip on reality completely. Not something that actually happens in a federal courtroom in the United States of America in real life. And here's what makes this even more insane and unprecedented. Trump's own legal team got sanctioned too because of what happened. The judge was so fed up with the whole circus that he went after the lawyers for enabling this behavior and not controlling their client properly. Think about that for a second. Trump's behavior was so completely out of control that his own lawyers got in trouble for it. They are supposed to be the professionals in the room who maintain order. They are supposed to keep their client calm and focused on the legal issues. They are supposed to handle the legal arguments, while Trump sits quietly and lets them do their job effectively. Instead, Trump turned the whole thing into a spectacle, and his lawyers could not do anything to stop him from destroying the proceedings. Or maybe they did not want to stop him because they knew what he was doing. Maybe this was all part of the plan from the beginning. Maybe Trump wanted to create chaos and make himself look like a victim of a corrupt system. But even if that was the strategy, it backfired badly in my opinion. Because now the story is not about whatever legal issue was being discussed in that courtroom. The story is about the President of the United States being physically removed from a courtroom for acting like a complete lunatic. This is historic in the worst possible way for this country. No sitting president has ever been dragged out of a federal courtroom for their conduct before this. No sitting president has ever screamed at a judge and refused to follow basic courtroom decorum like this. No sitting president has ever had to be physically escorted out by security while the whole world watched in disbelief. Trump just made history, but not the kind of history anyone should want to make for themselves. And now everyone is asking what this means for the future of our institutions. If Trump thinks he can scream at judges without any real consequences, what else does he think he can do? If he believes he is above the law so completely that he cannot even follow basic courtroom rules, what does that say about how he views his power as president? These are the questions we need to be asking right now as a country, because this was not just an embarrassing moment that will be forgotten. This was a warning sign about where things are heading. So stick with me, because we are going to break down exactly what happened, what Trump said, and what this means for the country going forward. All right, let us get into the details of what actually happened in that courtroom, because the full story is even more insane than the headlines suggest. So Trump was in federal court for a hearing related to one of his ongoing legal cases that have been dragging on. The specifics of the case almost do not matter at this point, because what happened during the hearing completely overshadowed everything else that was supposed to be discussed. Trump was sitting there with his lawyers, and the judge made a ruling that Trump did not like at all. Now, in a normal situation, when a judge makes a ruling you do not like, your lawyers object through proper legal channels like professionals. They make arguments based on the law. They file motions with the court. They appeal if necessary through the system. That is how the legal system works for everyone in this country. But Trump is not everyone, and he does not think the rules apply to him. Trump believes he is above the system entirely. And when that ruling came down, something inside him snapped completely, and he lost all control. According to multiple witnesses and legal observers who were in the room that day, Trump stood up from his seat without any warning whatsoever. His lawyers tried to get him to sit back down immediately, but he ignored them completely, like they were not even there. He started pointing at the judge and yelling at the top of his lungs. He called the judge a radical lunatic who was part of a corrupt system designed to destroy him personally. He said the entire proceeding was rigged against him from the very start, and everyone knew it. He said everyone can see what is happening here, and nobody is fooled by this charade. And then he said something that really tells you everything about his mindset right now, in this moment. He said he was above the law. He actually said those words out loud in a federal courtroom for everyone to hear. The President of the United States standing there screaming that he is above the law, while a judge is trying to conduct a legitimate hearing. This is the kind of thing that will get any normal person thrown in jail for contempt immediately. But Trump is not a normal person, obviously. He is the President of the United States, and that creates a constitutional crisis that nobody really knows how to handle properly right now. The judge tried to regain control of the situation multiple times, according to observers who were present. He warned Trump to sit down and stop talking immediately. He told Trump that his lawyers were there to speak for him and that he needed to let them do their jobs professionally. He explained that there are rules in a courtroom that apply to everyone equally, including the President of the United States without exception. But Trump did not care about any of that at all. He kept going with his tirade. He kept yelling accusations. He kept pointing at the judge and making serious accusations about corruption. At one point, he apparently turned to the gallery and started addressing the reporters directly, telling them to make sure they got all of this on record because the American people needed to see how corrupt the system really was. He was putting on a show for the cameras. He was playing to his audience, even though cameras are not typically allowed in federal courtrooms. He knew this would get out to the public. He knew people would be talking about this for days, and he wanted to control the narrative even while he was completely out of control behaviorally. Finally, the judge had enough of this spectacle unfolding in his courtroom. After multiple warnings that Trump completely ignored, the judge ordered security to remove Trump from the courtroom immediately. And this is where it gets really wild and unprecedented. Security officers actually had to physically escort the President of the United States out of the room like he was a common troublemaker. Trump reportedly did not go quietly either. According to witnesses, he kept talking loudly as they moved him toward the door. He kept yelling about corruption and rigged systems and how everyone would see the truth eventually when it all came out. It was chaos in that courtroom, complete and total chaos, unlike anything anyone had ever seen. The kind of thing you would not believe if you saw it in a movie, because it would seem too unrealistic and over the top. But this actually happened in a federal courtroom in the United States of America in the year 2025. The sitting president was dragged out like someone who had too much to drink at a bar and would not leave when asked politely by management. And it did not stop there with just Trump being removed. The judge was so furious about what happened that he also went after Trump's legal team for their role. He sanctioned members of the team for enabling Trump's behavior and not controlling their client. He said they had a professional responsibility to control their client, and they failed completely at that basic duty. He said this kind of conduct was unacceptable and would not be tolerated in his courtroom by anyone. Now think about what that means for Trump's legal strategy going forward in all his cases. His lawyers just got sanctioned because of his behavior in court. That is going to make it harder to find good lawyers willing to represent him in the future. That is going to make it harder to mount effective legal defenses in his cases. That is going to create problems in every single case he is involved in going forward, because what lawyer wants to sign up for this kind of chaos? What lawyer wants to be sanctioned and have their professional reputation damaged because their client cannot stop screaming at judges? Trump is making himself toxic to the legal profession, and that is going to have serious consequences for him. The reactions to this incident have been exactly what you would expect based on which side of the political divide you are on right now. Trump supporters are saying this proves the system is rigged against him unfairly. They are saying the judge provoked him into reacting. They are saying Trump was just standing up for himself against a corrupt establishment that wants to destroy him. They are spinning this as Trump being a fighter who will not back down even when the system tries to silence him unfairly. On the other side, critics are saying this proves Trump is completely unfit for office. They are saying no president should ever behave this way in a courtroom under any circumstances. They are saying this is evidence of someone who genuinely believes he is above the law and can do whatever he wants without facing consequences. They are calling for investigations and hearings and even more talk about impeachment proceedings. The country is completely divided on how to interpret what happened, but everyone agrees on one thing for certain. This was unprecedented in American history. This was historic for all the wrong reasons. And this changes everything about how we think about Trump's relationship with the legal system going forward. And here is what really worries constitutional scholars and legal experts about this whole situation we find ourselves in. The courts do not have an army to enforce their rulings. They do not have enforcement power of their own to compel compliance. Their authority depends entirely on people respecting their rulings and following their orders voluntarily. When the President of the United States stands up in a courtroom and screams that he is above the law, when he has to be physically removed because he will not follow basic rules, that undermines the entire foundation of the judicial system. It sends a message to everyone watching that the president does not have to follow the same rules as everyone else in society. It tells Trump supporters that defying courts is acceptable and even admirable behavior. It creates a precedent that could have devastating consequences for the rule of law in this country for generations to come. This was not just an embarrassing moment for Trump personally. This was an attack on the legitimacy of the judicial system itself. All right. Let us break this down into the key points you need to understand about what happened and why it matters so much for the future of this country. Point number one, this was not a spontaneous outburst, but rather part of a deliberate strategy to delegitimize the courts entirely. Trump has been attacking judges and prosecutors for years now, relentlessly. He has called them corrupt over and over. He has called them radical enemies of the people. He has said the entire legal system is rigged against him personally. And this courtroom meltdown fits perfectly into that narrative he has been building for years. By screaming at the judge and getting himself thrown out, Trump created a spectacle that his supporters can point to as evidence that the system is persecuting him unfairly. He turned a routine legal hearing into a political event that dominated the news. He made himself the victim instead of the defendant in the public eye. This is a deliberate strategy. It might look like chaos, but there is a method to the madness here. Trump wants his supporters to believe that any legal action against him is illegitimate and corrupt, and scenes of him being dragged out of a courtroom by security help sell that narrative to people who already distrust institutions. But here's the problem with this strategy that Trump does not seem to understand or care about at all. It only works if you never actually face real consequences for your behavior in the end. It only works if the courts eventually back down and let you do whatever you want without penalty. And that is not what is happening here in this situation. The judge did not back down from Trump. The judge threw Trump out of his courtroom. The judge sanctioned his lawyers for their role. The judge made it absolutely clear that this behavior would not be tolerated, no matter who you are or what office you hold. So now Trump has created this spectacle for the cameras, but he did not get what he wanted out of it. Ultimately, he did not intimidate the judge into ruling in his favor. He did not make the case go away magically. All he did was make himself look like someone who cannot control his own behavior, someone who thinks rules do not apply to him personally, someone who has to be physically removed from rooms because he will not act like an adult. That is not the image of strength that Trump wants to project to his supporters. That is the image of someone who is spiraling out of control completely. Point number 2. This incident raises serious constitutional questions that nobody has good answers to right now. What happens when a sitting president openly defies the courts like this? What happens when the president says he is above the law and acts like it consistently? The Constitution does not have clear instructions for this exact situation. The founders assumed that presidents would respect the judicial branch even when they disagreed with specific rulings against them. They did not anticipate a president who would stand up in court and scream at a judge until he had to be dragged out by security officers. So now we are in uncharted territory, constitutionally speaking, as a nation. The courts can issue rulings against Trump all day long, but how do you actually enforce those rulings against a sitting president who believes he does not have to follow them? Impeachment is one option, but that requires Congress to act decisively. And with the current political divisions in Congress, it is hard to see Republicans voting to remove Trump no matter what he does publicly. So what is the check on presidential power here? Exactly. What stops Trump from ignoring every court ruling he does not like going forward? These are questions that legal scholars are grappling with right now, and nobody has satisfying answers yet. Point number 3. This is going to affect every single legal case Trump is involved in going forward significantly. His lawyers just got sanctioned for his behavior in that courtroom. That is a black mark on their professional records permanently. That makes it harder for them to represent him effectively in the future, and it makes it harder to find new lawyers willing to take the risk of representing someone who might get them sanctioned or worse. Trump has already burned through multiple legal teams over the years because lawyers keep quitting or getting fired or facing professional consequences for being associated with him and his cases. This incident is going to make that problem even worse for him. What competent lawyer wants to stand next to a client who might start screaming at the judge at any moment without warning? What lawyer wants to risk their career and their license because their client cannot follow basic courtroom rules of conduct? Trump is isolating himself legally with every incident like this. He is making it harder to mount effective defenses in his various cases, and that could have serious consequences as these cases move forward through the system. Point number 4, the political fallout from this is going to be significant. No matter how you try to spin it, Trump supporters are going to use this to energize the base for sure. They are going to say Trump is being persecuted by corrupt institutions. They are going to say he is fighting against a rigged system bravely. They are going to turn this into a rallying cry and a fundraising opportunity for donations. But here is the thing. The people who already support Trump were always going to support him no matter what. The question is what independents and moderate voters think when they see the president of the United States being dragged out of a courtroom for screaming at a judge like a maniac. Polls consistently show that voters, especially independents, value stability and normalcy above chaos. They want a president who acts presidential in public. They want someone who can represent the country with dignity on the world stage. And this incident is the complete opposite of that. This is chaos personified. This is instability on display. This is a president who cannot even sit quietly in a courtroom for a few hours like a normal adult. That image is going to stick with people for a long time, and it might matter a lot when it comes time to vote in the next election. So where do we go from here after something like this happens? Honestly, the situation is deeply concerning for anyone who cares about the rule of law in this country. Regardless of politics, Trump has now demonstrated publicly that he is willing to openly defy courts and create chaos when things do not go his way. He has shown that he genuinely believes he is above the law and does not have to follow the same rules as everyone else in society. And he has faced minimal real consequences for this behavior so far, despite everything. Yes, he got thrown out of the courtroom that day. Yes, his lawyers got sanctioned for their role, but Trump is still the president with all that power. He still has all the powers of that office at his disposal. He can still attack judges on social media every day. He can still call the system corrupt publicly. He can still do whatever he wants, and it is not clear that anyone can actually stop him effectively. This is the danger that legal experts have been warning about for years now. What happens when a president decides the law does not apply to him? We are finding out right now in real time. And the answer so far is not encouraging for anyone who believes in constitutional democracy and the rule of law. The next few weeks and months are going to be critical for the future of this country and its institutions. Every court ruling involving Trump is now going to be a potential flashpoint for conflict. Every hearing could turn into another spectacle like the one we just witnessed. And every time Trump defies the courts, every time he screams at judges and has to be removed, it normalizes this behavior a little more. It makes it a little more acceptable for future presidents to do the same thing without shame. The precedents being set right now will outlast Trump's presidency. They will affect how presidents interact with courts for generations to come. And that should concern everyone, regardless of their political views or party affiliation. Because if the president can ignore the courts whenever he wants, then the courts have no real power to check the executive. And if the courts have no power, then we do not really have a constitutional system anymore. We just have whoever is strongest doing whatever they want. That is not democracy. That is something else entirely, and it is dangerous. So make sure you are subscribed, because this story is just beginning. The fallout from this incident is going to dominate the news for weeks, and I will be here to break it all down for you every step of the way. I will see you in the next one.